Moin, ihr wunderbare Menschen des Interwebs. Ich begrüße euch ganz herzlich zurück zu meinem Let's Play von The Great Ace-Attorney Chronicles. Es gab eine Verhandlungspause oder es gibt noch eine Verhandlungspause gerade. Und nach dieser werden wir vermutlich die Aussage von Olive Green hören, die nach wie vor ja meine Hauptverdächtige in diesem Fall ist. Joyful, jubilant, jumping jacks. Oh, Mr. Natsume, I'm so pleased for you. Locum student Mr. Naruhodo and non-locum judicial assistant Miss Mikotoba. No, finally, at long last, there can be proof. Proof that I'm innocent and proof that my tea is innocent. Ah, good morning, my dear fellows. Erlock shows. May you drink my tepid tea and fall forever silent. I thought the tea was innocent. Mr. Sholmes, you came. How wonderful. Please, save your derision. I know the... Derision? Derision? Let's move on. I know what you're all thinking. Good morning, he says, when it's very nearly time for luncheon. Your scorn is written clearly across your faces. Nobody said or thought anything of the sort. The truth is, I was determined that today would be the day. As sleep seduced me last night, I thought, tomorrow for once I shall not oversleep. I will rise early and be present in court to support my companions. Such spirited determination has a beauty all of its own, does it not? Oh yes. And then I began to muse on the subject. Why do people oversleep? I queried, why, time after time, do they make the same foolish blunder? And the answer came to me at once. It's so delightfully simple. People oversleep because they sleep. Well, is that not an astute insight into the matter? Oh, yes. Upon which realization, I attempted an experiment. I didn't sleep a wink all night. And the results? By first light, I was exhausted and began to be assailed by fits of drowsiness. Shocking. And so the conclusion of last night's experiment is this. A good night's sleep is quite simply essential. Yes, I think most of us probably knew that already. What others presuppose, I prove by experimentation that my dear fellow is a scientific method. Ah yes, and one more thing, do you remember this? Yes, of course. It's the poison that Miss Green was about to drink at the hospital yesterday. Oh, you didn't manage to... It was a laborious task, as the bottle was near empty, but such inconveniences do not hinder Sholmes. I managed to confirm that it contained poison. I was right. Perhaps, though of course such circumstantial evidence doesn't prove Miss Green's guilt. I shall leave the bottle in your care now, but licking the inside of the neck is not recommended. No shit, Sherlock. Could I have a word? Gregson, how good of you to come. Forget it, excuse me. Wait a minute, Inspector. I don't wish to make a nuisance of myself. From the look on your face, I would say it's someone else who you think is making a nuisance of himself. Das ist auch ein Wort, das ich immer nur schreibe. My dear Inspector, please speak freely. Pretend that I'm not here. Believe me, if I could do that, life would be a whole lot simpler for me. Do you have the results, Inspector, of the investigation of Mr. Shamesby's room? Not yet. Shouldn't be long now, though. No, I'm here about something else. That convict, actually. Oh, you mean the man from this newspaper article we discovered yesterday in Mr. Shamesby's room? A man by the name of... Ah yes, Selden. I went through the archives at yard and dug out the fellow's file. There's something in there that... Well, it caught my eye. Something caught your eye? What, Inspector? What is it? I've copied out the relevant parts for you, so you can read it for yourselves. Thank you. Okay, the capital offender's file has been entered into the court record. müssen wir uns gleich mal angucken. These documents include the details that were in the newspaper cutting we found in Mr. Shamesby's room. I will rearrange everything in the court record so we don't have duplicate information. Why are you giving us a copy of this important file, though? Well, you're the ones who turned up the clue in the first place, aren't you? I'm just making sure things get handled in the proper fashion. No, Scotland Yard's workings are so wonderful. Indeed, my dear fellows, and the inspector here is a shining diamond in its crown. A shining diamond. In the rough, maybe. Look, I just don't want to be beholden to a lawyer, that's all. Counsel for the defense and the defendant. Court proceedings are about to resume. Make your way into the courtroom at once. Okay, so bevor wir jetzt hier weitergehen, gucken wir uns einmal an, was Mr. Schaums uns gebracht hat und dann, was uns der ungeschliffene Diamant eines Inspektors gebracht hat. Kann man hier irgendwas untersuchen? So, this is the poison we've been hearing so much about. There are a few remnants on the bottom of the bottle here, look. You mustn't be tempted to try it. Of course not, as long as we don't lose this trial. No, even if we lose the trial. No, we mustn't lose the trial in the first place, Mr. Naruhodo. Your mind up, Susato-san. Okay, aber hier haben wir dann sonst nichts weiter. Gut, dann gucken wir uns jetzt nochmal den Pfeil an. Wieso darf ich nicht mehr zurückklicken? Jetzt. Okay. Investigative findings related to Selden. 18 counts of burglary, 6 counts of suspected murder. Died of natural causes whilst in prison. His final moments witnessed only by his cellmate. The estimated 1,000 pounds worth of loot he stole remains unrecovered. Ja, ich glaube, dass das immer noch in Mr. Natsumes Unterkunft ist. Manchester's Strangeways Prison announced the death of convicted murder and burglar Selden by natural causes in the early hours this morning. He had been suffering with fever since the end of October. Alerted by the shouts of his fellow cellmate, medical staff arrived to find him already dead before his capital punishment could be carried out. Mein Verdacht ist eben, dass der Zellenkollege unser Mr. Shamesby ist. Aber da bin ich mir jetzt noch nicht zu 100% sicher. Okay, gut. Dann würde ich sagen, gehen wir mal zurück hier. Well, I shall leave you then. I will be listening with interest from the public gallery. Not nodding off at all. Certainly not. Thank you, Mr. Sholmes. I'm rather tired of seeing Mr. Mustache in floods of tears personally, so the best of luck to you. Welcome, student Mr. Naruhodo. Yes, Mr. Natsume. It's time, isn't it? Yes, this is it. Mr. Leaf Green and Mr. William Shamespeare. This is going to be the final battle. I won't really have saved Soseki-san until I've exposed the whole truth of everything that's been going on. But it's all coming to a head now. You can do it, Ryunosuke. You have to. In the name of Her Majesty the Queen, I hereby declare this court to be in session again now. Before the recess, we heard a most startling accusation from the defense. Namely, that the victim of the case we heard here only a few days ago is the true perpetrator of this incident. A reckless, rash, and prejudiced charge of wrongdoing, in my opinion, my lord. However, the prosecution has tried to extend every courtesy to this amateur newcomer from dubious eastern shores. Thank you for that backhanded consideration. A rather cold assessment from the honorable British prosecutor, I must say. So, Lord von Zieks, is the new witness present and ready to take the stand? Ready and waiting in the witness's antechamber, my lord. Very well. Bailiff, bring the witness in. Witnesses, state your names and occupations for the court, please. William Shakespeare, my liege. For mine occupation, I can say only that I be a tragic victim to be pitied. Currently unemployed, in other words. I am Olive Green. I'm a fledgling artist. Well, no, not a fledgling, really. A hopeless failure who's too weak-spirited to admit she has no talent, I suppose. Also currently unemployed, in other words. What a coterie. Mr. Shakespeare, my lord, I am thy humble servant. I'm afraid that you are no longer merely the victim in this affair. The possibility has been raised that you are in fact the assailant, intent on taking the life of your fellow lodger. The part you have played in this whole business will be thoroughly scrutinized, I assure you. I would for naught else, my lord. And Miss Green... yes? You are aware of the reason you have been summoned to this courtroom today, I presume? Yes, the officer did explain. He said I poisoned this ridiculous buffoon. And do you accept the charge, Miss Green? I don't know anything about any poisoning. And I don't know anything about this man. Come, lady, die to live. Verily I know not thy prickly pigmented personage. Well, let us proceed with the matter at hand, that being to ascertain whether or not Miss Green has any involvement in this affair. It's all very strange indeed. Why would you suspect me? I barely ever go to the East End anyway. It so happens that I passed by that neighborhood 6 days ago, that's all. And on the night that this man was poisoned, I was still in hospital, fighting for my life. Yes, having been unfortunately caught up in the incident on the street outside the Garrett household. An incident that rendered you unconscious for some 3 days. I was struck in the middle of my back by a knife through no fault of my own, and now I am under suspicion. What other irrelevant things might I be suspected of? It's all very disturbing. Your energies may be better spent worrying about random knife attacks, I feel, Miss Green. At this point in time, all that appears to connect you with Mr. Shakespeare's lodgings is the Briar Road incident of 6 days ago. That's why we would like you to testify formally now about exactly what happened. The incident 6 days ago? You mean you want me to relieve that awful accident? Unfortunately, yes. Please tell the court what happened that day. And of course, we will be interested to hear from you about your movements that day too, Mr. Shakespeare. Oh, but what happened 6 days ago has nothing to do with me being poisoned. Let us proceed then. The witnesses will present their formal testimony to the court on the subject of the incident that took place on Briar Road the evening of the 17th of February. Okay. The evening of 17th February. 6 days ago, at about 5 p.m., I was walking along in the snow when I was suddenly stabbed in the back. Coincidentally, it happened to be just outside the house where the men in this case have their lodgings. I was at the tavern on the eve of which thou speakest, for I had bespoke my supper. It was the first time I'd been in the area. I had a little matter to attend to, that's all. Anyway, I was admitted straight to hospital, so I knew nothing about all of this business. Yes, the second incident inside a week at what I believe to be aptly described as the haunted lodgings. One can only presume this is a most unfortunate coincidence. Meanwhile, you say you were not in your room, Mr. Shakespeare. It was the following morn when I did awaken that I learned of the dire events. Mary, what a commotion did the officers of the law make on the floor above mine. And Sasaki-san was arrested on suspicion of attempted murder. As suspected, there is nothing connecting these two witnesses but happenstance. It's true, it does seem as though they are unrelated at first glance, but I'm not so sure. There's something lurking in the shadows here, I feel certain of it. And this is my one and only chance to expose it. Counsel, you may now cross-examine these two witnesses if you wish. Yes, my lord. Okay. Ich kann mir eben vorstellen, dass sie ihn in der Taverne treffen wollte. Na, gucken wir mal. So it was 6 days ago at about 5 p.m. I was walking along in the snow when I was suddenly stabbed in the back. Coincidentally, it happened to be just outside the house where the men in this case have their lodgings. I was at the tavern on the eve of which thou speakest, for I had bespoke my supper. It was the first time I'd been in the area. I had a little matter to attend to, that's all. Okay, und hier würde ich jetzt gerne wissen, was genau sie denn vorhatte. What little matter, Miss Green? Please elaborate. It was nothing, really. It's not worth mentioning. You remember, you mentioned it to us yesterday at the hospital. It was related to the court you were holding. What was that? She clearly just hit something behind her back. From memory, I believe the court contained a note that read, I have information regarding the death of Duncan Ross. What does that matter? This has nothing to do with Duncan. Mr. Shakespeare, do you have something to share with the court? To be or not to be? That is the question. Ah, pray forgive me, the great bard's words springeth from within me with near a thought. Don't tell me it's because you're possessed by Shakespeare's spirit, right? Hearing Miss Green's words a moment ago seemed to make you think of something. Something of relevance, perhaps. Well, nay, sire, thus nothing at all. Presumably you know the name, though, Mr. Duncan Ross, I mean. After all, you were both lodgers in the same house. I would it were so, but sadly nay. Lodging be a lonely occupation, sire. My lodging fellows be rarely known to me. So you haven't heard of him, even though he passed away in the room just one floor above yours? Miss Green. Me, my lord. Have I done something wrong? The cord that was mentioned before, containing the note, do you have it upon your person? I do, yes, but I don't need it anymore. In fact, I should throw it away, really. Before you dispose of it, the court will take it as evidence, please. Okay. Of course, that's what links Mr. Shakespeare and Miss Green. It's Duncan Ross. Now, continue with your testimony, please, Miss Green. Okay, Moment, ich würde gerne mir den Umschlag einmal angucken. The envelope has been ripped open rather carelessly, hasn't it? The screen strikes me as the type to open correspondence more neatly than that. What is it? The way the envelope is torn, I'm almost sure I've seen the exact same shape somewhere else. Oh, you don't mean... Were you thinking of this piece of evidence, Mr. Naruhodo? Exactly, that's it. Try to match them up. They go together perfectly. This torn off end of the envelope clearly belongs with this cord. Okay. Das habe ich mir ja schon gedacht, weil wir das auf dem Boden in Mr. Shakespeares Raum gefunden haben, in der Unterkunft von ihm. Da habe ich mir ja schon gedacht, dass, als ich das dann bei Miss Green gesehen habe, dass die beiden Enden eben zusammengehören. Okay. Gut. Anyway, I was admitted straight to hospital, so I knew nothing about all of this business. Okay, Moment. I was at the tavern on the eve of which thou speakest, for I had bespoke my supper. Okay. Ich frage mich, ob ich jetzt hier die Karte, den Umschlag präsentieren könnte, weil wir haben ja die eine Hälfte von diesem Umschlag bei ihm im Raum gefunden. Und dass die Karte beweist, dass er in dieser Taverne auf Olive Green gewartet hat. Aber ich glaube, ich greife jetzt erst nochmal die anderen Sachen an. Weil ich wollte eben zuerst das hören, wo sie gerade hin unterwegs war. Das war das Erste, was ich... Ups, ich habe R gedrückt. Yes, you didn't regain consciousness until the day after the trial, did you? In the early hours. Exactly. So how could I have had anything to do with it? And yet, you still haul me in here to court like this, honestly. So at the time of the poisoning, the witness was unconscious in her hospital bed. Could there be a more airtight alibi, I ask you? And yet, in spite of that, you claim that I was the culprit. Well, I am... But you certainly haven't produced any evidence to support your wild claim, have you? None at all. There you have it. The good lady has yet to see evidence, my learned Nipponese friend. I'm working on it. Counsel, I will point out there that the jury's next decision will be final. You're really up against the wall here. Oh, Mr. Naruhodo, you pursued Mr. Shakespeare wonderfully there. It's worked out well, hasn't it? We have a new clue at last. Alright, now I need to pull off a really insightful objection somewhere. Well, as you've managed to expose this promising new angle, I wonder if you should perhaps try to develop that. And yelling out objections isn't necessarily the best way to do that, I suppose. Okay. So 6 days ago... Das ist nicht so wichtig. Das ist auch nicht so wichtig. Ja, es ist wirklich... Also, das ist meine einzige andere Option, wirklich das zu verbinden mit dem Briefumschlag. A tavern, you say? Which one? There was this luck and salad where I did tarry. This a devil in the East End. And a little unexpected, I feel. What do you mean, Lord von Zieks? Its luck and salad offers unusual fine dining for the locality, at least. Not an establishment you would expect to be patronized by a man with not even a crumb of bread in his room. It's true, the menu lists premium crusts of bread and glasses of water in different levels of cloudiness. I would have expected grubbery in the local vicinity to be more appropriate for your means. Watery soup and mushy peas, or rather, sobby water and pea-like mush. All equally appetizing. I just wanted to try some water in a different pub for once. What's wrong with that? How different can water really be? Or perhaps there's a more plausible explanation? A specific reason why he had to go to that particular establishment? Agreed. The fact that on that day of all days he dined at a place he wouldn't normally, it does stand out. So Mr. Shakespeare's own actions on the day of the incident 6 days ago were slightly suspicious. I wonder if we have some evidence that can explain those actions. Ja, den Briefumschlag. Oder die Karte. Mr. Shakespeare. Yes, sire. On the day in question, is it not the case that you visited the Slug and Salad, a place you don't normally patronize, for a very particular reason? I don't know what you're talking about. Pray, if thou hast some purpose, speakest. Very well, I will present the court with evidence. Evidence that explains why you had to be at the Slug and Salad that day, namely... I hope. I believe this court reveals the answer. Good lord, Miss Green's court, you mean? That's right, my lord. It reads, I have information regarding the death of Duncan Ross. Come to the Slug and Salad on Briar Road at 5 p.m. on 17th. Don't tell anybody else about this letter or the meeting. It is a matter of utmost importance. Mr. Shakespeare, your actions on the afternoon of Miss Green's stabbing... are exactly as described in this note. Personally, I find it hard to believe that's a coincidence. Don't you, Mr. Shakespeare? Excuse me, can I say something? Yes, Miss Green. That card was delivered to me. It doesn't have anything to do with this odd man, does it? Well, you would think so, yes, but it's hard to believe it's merely... My lord, may I? May you what, Miss Green? I would like to make something very clear about the card. Very well then, you may amend your testimony to include details about the peculiar note. This note was delivered to me at my address. It's nothing to do with the odd man next to me here. Really? Ich sehe das ja anders, weil genau ein Stück von genau demselben Umschlag in Mr. Shakespeares Unterkunft gefunden wurde. The day before the incident, exactly 1 week ago now, this note was delivered to your address, and upon carrying out the instructions in the note, you found yourself in hospital. Yes, I did. It's terrible, everything that's happened to me. Yes, it is terrible. If it's all true, that is... What do you mean? Miss Green, have a look at this, please. It's the torn-off end of an envelope. And it so happens that it fits together perfectly with the envelope of the note you received. Where did you find that? In Mr. Shakespeare's room. In my room? Mr. Shakespeare, do you perhaps remember this note from somewhere? Your actions that afternoon followed the instructions in the note to the letter. Come to the Slug and Salad on Briar Road at 5 p.m. on 17th, so that's exactly where you went. Let me ask you again, Mr. Shakespeare. You already knew about this note, didn't you? And you, Miss Green. What did I do? As this torn-off end of the envelope proves, the note was originally in Mr. Shakespeare's room, so how is it that it came to be in your possession? I don't have the first idea. I'm just a fledgling artist after all. There is only one explanation. You broke into Mr. Shakespeare's room and stole it. You did what? Sorry, thou has to what? You broke, I mean, thou were in my room? What on earth do you want with me? It would seem that both witnesses need to testify again. Miss Green. Yes. Whilst you have the court's sympathy, I'm sure for the suffering you have endured in recent events, anyone found to be giving false testimony in a court of law will be duly punished. Please bear that in mind. Yes, I know. Very well then, witnesses, you will give formal testimony again now. On the subject of this curious anomaly regarding the note Miss Green claims to have received. Okay. The anomaly of the note. Gut, aber bevor wir uns jetzt diese Zeugenaussage anhören, gibt es hier erstmal einen Cut. Ich bedanke mich ganz herzlich fürs Zusehen. Hoffe, ihr hattet Spaß. Und wenn ihr mögt, sehen wir uns sehr, sehr gerne im nächsten Part wieder. Bis dahin, ciao.